Good morning, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talks. Are you serious? I'll be joined by my co-host, the Mad New Yorker, here in just a few minutes. And I want to welcome you all into this Friday. A lot of news to talk about. A lot of stuff's gone down. Just the last 48 hours, two of the most iconic coaches, probably the greatest NFL head coach and the greatest college head coach, which maybe we'll debate a little bit, of all time, have moved on from their jobs. One retired, and don't be fooled by press conferences. One was fired, as well as another iconic coach in Pete Carroll being fired. So we'll talk about that stuff. We'll get into the other coaches that have been fired and the openings that are there. We'll talk about the quarterbacks in the playoffs who we think we trust the most and trust the least. And I don't know what else we were going to talk about, but I think that was pretty close to it. We'll talk Belichick and Saban a lot. I want to welcome everybody on TGI Sports Talk, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or the Northeast Streaming Sports Roku app. Make sure you get that downloaded. Lots of great content there, as I tell you every week. And also we're on Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook and YouTube feeds. And Let's Talk Sports YouTube feed as well. Quick shout out to Ralph Williams at RW Media, specifically the sports corner that he does over there with Smoking Jim Frazier on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. on WBVP, 1230 a.m., 99.3 FM. Thumbs up to DDH as well. Couple of programming notes before we go on, and I'll mention these near the end of the show. No Major League Baseball update this afternoon or next week. I'm traveling all next week, so we'll have some changes to show times, and there'll be, unfortunately, no Are You Serious next Friday, as I'll be flying home from Sin City. I get to spend a week in Sin City at a trade show. I don't want to go. So anyway, we got a lot to talk about. So let's get started and get the Mad New Yorker, Mr. Carlos Chavez, if I can find the right thing. Good morning, Carlos. How are you?
Good morning, Keith. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Just want to play a little something for you guys. Please. We can start off with the conversation of a brand new hiring already. And a goodbye.
A brand new hiring?
Yeah, and a goodbye to a great legendary coach.
Which one are you talking about? Bill Belichick?
Jared Mayo was already announced as a Patriot.
I know Mayo was announced this morning, yes. Rick Sherlock, thank you for breaking that news to us while we were on the Mac and Jack show. But there were some reports last night that they'd already offered him a contract.
Yeah.
And a smart way to go. Again, before we get into Belichick, we'll talk about Mayo just for a second. He's a loyal soldier, great player for the Patriots. He had some chances to interview for jobs last year, and the word was that Bob Kraft said, stick around, I'll make it worth your while. And now it's worth his while. And I think it's a really good move for the Patriots. So, but Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, and Pete Carroll all moving on within 24 hours is just shocking. Pete Carroll was a shock to me. Saban was a shock. Belichick, not a shock. Well, let's be clear. The only guy who left on his own volition here was Nick Saban. Belichick, yesterday's press conference was nice. All kinds of roses. They were very amicable and nice to each other and complimentary. But make no mistake, Bill Belichick wanted to stay the coach of the Patriots, and he is no longer the coach of the Patriots. That means you get fired. And pretty much the same with Pete Carroll. So, and again, you can think what you want of these guys, and we'll start with Belichick because it's the obvious place for me to start. There's a lot. 24 years. I think that's the longest head coach ownership relationship in the history of the NFL. 24 years. They've done a lot of great things together. They won 6 Super Bowls. They went to 9 Super Bowls. They went to 14 AFC championship games in 20 years. That's like unheard of, but that's never going to happen. This will never happen again. No coach is ever going to do this again. And a lot of that, for you guys who want to say it was just Brady, you know what I find very funny? When Brady left, the Brady haters said, he'll be nothing without Belichick. He'll be nothing without Belichick. And as Belichick has struggled the last few years, they said it was all Brady. It was all Brady. Well, it was a combination of the two. The guy was drafted 199th in the 6th round. that coaching staff, including Bill Belichick, turned Tom Brady into that great player that he was. So you can't tell me he doesn't, this is all Tom Brady. So
No.
he had a great career. Yeah, I like the way he went out and talked to the press yesterday and said, I'm sorry we didn't have the greatest relationship all the time, but I respect the job you do. And I thought he showed a lot of the real Bill Belichick there too that you don't normally get to see. Give me your thoughts on Belichick first, and we'll talk about that.
First of all, I want to apologize to you and to Patriot fans being obnoxious and some of the things I say. But
we do.
Huh?
That's what we do. It's fine.
Yeah, but it was sort of true, and it was hard to swallow that pill, and I've been saying it for the last almost 4 seasons now that he should have just went up to upper management and moved on from the game, and now that it's official, he is going to be missed. I'm going to miss him as somebody who has a great effect on football and the NFL, and you have to understand this is not just a man who started his greatness in as a Patriot. He's helped the Giants win 2 Super Bowls. So he's been to what, 12 Super Bowls? Was that?
No, he's been to 9 Super Bowls, won 6, lost 3. Including the Giants. Sorry. So 11.
11, right? So I'm sorry, I said 12. So 11, and so that's a man who has his hands in a lot of in the mixing bowl for sure. So kudos to him as not just a good coach for the Patriots, but a great ambassador for NFL football and the NFL, and he's definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame regardless of some of the things that happen later in his career. But if he moves on to another team, if he chooses to, it won't be anything but positive, I don't believe. He only had positive effects on teams. The situation that happened to him in Cleveland was more of an ownership type deal.
Agreed.
In fact,
and he did make the playoffs one year there. It's not like it was a total bust.
No, it wasn't a total disaster, but and he's also produced some of the best coaches in the NFL in the last few decades. Cromwell, Schwartz, a couple other guys.
Yeah.
So
most of his coaching tree has not been terribly successful, unfortunately.
Well, let me.
That's not his job either, by the way. I always talk about this, right? It's not his job to groom guys to be head coaches. Right. It's his job to win games. So,
but the guys that were with him from his foundation have become good coaches. It's hard to argue they've been great head coaches, but they've all been good coordinators and coaches. So,
the guys you just talked about are great coordinators.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
Yeah, so in that retrospect, but kudos also to ownership. As rocky as the situation has been for him, as he's been very, what's the word, money, he's very supportive with his financially, but he's also been kind of very hard to let go of some of the to go on spending free.
No, they've been a pretty stingy organization throughout the years.
Frugal's a safe word.
Quarterback.
Yeah, frugal's a safe word to use.
Yeah.
So and he's done a great job with the teams that he's been able to put together, and as well, having Belichick there. So, it's not. I don't think we'll be able to see something like this happen again for another team in our next few decades coming on, but we'll see.
Today,
another door opens, right? So.
Yeah, with the era of football that we're in today, we're just never going to see this. Teams cannot. You can't sustain that level of success anymore. You just can't.
They said that kind of stuff about those old coaches. Like the Cowboys coaches.
None of those guys sustained anything for 20 years. Tom Landry, as great as he was, he didn't win the number of Super Bowls, and he didn't sustain success over 20
right.
years.
But that was the saying too in the 80s. Don Shula, all these. It just, I feel
Shula's probably the closest without as much
winning a Super Bowl, right?
The ultimate success, right? He's the all-time winningest coach for now.
Right. So, I think it's fair to say that every generation has its, in football, and generation, you mean maybe decades, has their important pieces and people, and this was ours for the most part. Like we're in two different football generations, but still like and we saw with our own eyes, so we expect this every year. And I think that's where you're going with that. Your expectation is like, we're not going to see this again. And my thing is like, it's possible, but
well, look at when I say you can see teams with sustained. Boy, I still said it wrong. Boy, I'll just forget it. Continuing success, but I mean the ultimate. Going to 14 league conference championship games in 20 years, nobody's going to do that. Nobody. Because the league wants parity.
Right. I mean, something somewhere is gonna drop, and there's gonna be maybe one or two guys that still do it. I mean, even Tomlin right now, he's been to 15 straight winning seasons. So
that's far cry from 14 championship games in 20 years.
Yeah, but I'm saying that there's plenty of. The opportunities are there, but I don't think the talent is up to par. Maybe that's how I want to put it. I
said that there's been coaches and will be coaches that have continuing success, winning seasons over multiple, a decade or whatever, but not the ultimate type of success that the Patriots have seen. And by the way, the Patriots are a perfect example of why the NFL is going a totally wrong direction. Wanting parity and wanting all these 9-8 teams battling for playoff spots the last few weeks and not wanting great teams, because a lot of the NFL success, not that they weren't successful before this Patriot dynasty, but it really exploded because you have teams, same way with the Cowboys back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. You need polarizing teams. You need teams that people love and they hate them all at the same time, because that brings eyeballs to the TV set. And the NFL is going the opposite direction. They want a bunch of 10-7, 9-8 teams, and that doesn't develop great teams and great hatred or love on either side of it, in my mind.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's just different now than what we are used to watching, and sometimes different is bad for us older people, but it'll I think
it's very bad for this older guy. I can tell you right now.
I've been saying for the last 3 to 4 years also that the football hasn't been the best that it could be, and it can only get better from here, right? It could get worse, but it should only get better from here. And
I haven't won a Super Bowl in 70 years almost, so you can't get worse. 60. I'm
talking about the amount of scoring, the type of.
I thought you meant success for your football team. Sir.
No. Don't. We're not bringing up the football teams that I support. We're talking about your team right now.
Yeah, we're talking about good organizations right now.
And like, so, we'll see what the future has to bring. The NFL's trying to do things, and and when guys like this move on, it does cause a little bit of shaking. But look, you could say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people were talking about, nobody's going to be as good as Joe Montana. And then Tom Brady swoops in and changes everybody's mind, right? So,
yes. And that's, again, by the way, that's one of my arguments when people talk to Brady about the Brady thing. And, Belichick never won a Super Bowl without Brady. Well, Tom Landry never won a Super Bowl without Roger Staubach. And Noel never won one without Terry Bradshaw. Right. So, please. And Bill Walsh never won one without Joe Montana. So, great coaches have great players.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the arguments that's kind of about, as far as the copycat league is concerned, and it's always mentioned that the NFL is a copycat league. One of the most truest things is what we just said, is that if you don't have a complementary team that your coach can put out there and get 100% or 110% from, you're gonna have to make changes faster than you want to. So no matter how much talent your player has, or no matter how much talent your quarterback has, right? So,
and by the way, you mentioned before, and by the way, your remarks were very well put as somebody who was rooting against Belichick for most of his career because of where you root from. That's only natural. You hate the guy that is.
No, I don't hate him. He brought championships to New York. So,
well, good point. A long time ago, he should have been the Giants coach, but Bill Parcells screwed the Giants in, and that's a different story.
That's okay.
That's a different story for another day.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you have to respect the success that he's had, and you said he'd be missed. He's not going to be missed for long because he's going to be back in the sidelines next year.
Yeah,
either or Los Angeles. He's going to be on the sideline somewhere.
Yeah, can we agree though that the Patriots were ready to move on before Belichick was ready to move on to coaching next season?
Yes, that's why I said he was fired. I mean, again, it was a pretty, nice that they almost hugged. It looked like a Norm and Cliff from Frasier's hug, from Cheers hug. But he got fired. Let's not sugarcoat it. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what happens.
Yeah,
and good morning to. Let me say a quick good morning before we go on here to JB because I didn't do that at first. JB, good morning, and check out his Back It Up binge podcast. Which I know you can find on Twitter. I'm not sure about anywhere else. I can't say X. Sorry, it's still Twitter to me. So changes that. Just to kind of put evidence towards I'm not good with change.
Yeah, but I
see him. I see him in Atlanta. I see him in Atlanta next year.
Yeah, people are talking about Atlanta. I'm not sure that's a good fit for him for various reasons, but
they got to have a quarterback though. There's a lot of talent in that team. He's not, let's just say the choices were Washington and Atlanta. I'm going to Atlanta because there's a lot more talent on that roster outside of the quarterback. They need a quarterback, and there's going to be some quarterbacks you can bring in there that'll be available this year, whether it's through the draft. Look, he wants to win 15 games in the next 2 years, right? He wants that.
He wants that record. Yeah.
So I think a place, unless he's going to the Chargers who have a franchise quarterback, there's really the only place going to be open with that. So I think Atlanta's a perfect thing. And one of the best phony news stories I saw yesterday was somebody posted that Bill Belichick had agreed to a 3-year contract for $28.3 million already with Atlanta. And if you pay attention to that comment, you know what's funny about it, by the way.
Yeah,
it was the Super Bowl when they beat Atlanta 28-3 in the third quarter. That's the joke. So I thought that was very, very, very well done.
I'm just, there's a couple of teams that are on this vacancy that I think could use him. I don't know. I think just being in the NFC South, though, I think it's.
You could definitely have a better path to the playoffs there, an easier path.
He'll have a better chance, but well, why not go to AFC South where you could be at Tennessee and go to the playoff too?
Tennessee, as I was talking, I hadn't really thought about Tennessee because Mike Vrabel was another surprise in my mind getting fired there, but not as big as the others. That would be a good spot because I do think there's a quarterback in place there because I think Will Levis is going to be very good. Problem is there's a lack of talent at the wide receiver position. There's a lack of talent.
Keith, when was the last time that the Patriots had a ton of talent in the wide receiver position?
Well, again, but my point is he's going to want to go somewhere that it's not going to take 4 or 5 years to turn this thing around.
But if he's the one guy that he knows the defense is being run down there because it's pretty much almost a copycat of what he's running.
Yeah, that's true.
He has a quarterback that he can use. Two guys. I don't know if he likes Malik that much, but he'll have 2 young guys and be able to move either one of those and get a veteran to bridge the gap there if he needs to, because wherever Belichick goes, players will go, right? And
I think we saw enough of Will Levis. If he stays healthy, he can play in this league. So
yeah, I mean, that's a lot of quarterbacks right now that we're talking about, though, the young ones. And then he knows the ownership there. He knows about the ownership there. So, and Nashville is one of the fastest growing cities and one of the best cities to move to in the country. So
it's a possibility, and it's funny. That's the one that really hasn't come up, and maybe hasn't come up because it just opened up a couple of days ago too. I just feel in my gut it says it's either the Chargers or the Falcons. We'll see what happens. I think it'll happen fairly quickly.
I like Belichick. What I like about him is that he's going to set his own path, and if he has to burn a bridge or two, he'll do it because he wants to be in the best situation for him. So, and I like that kind of confidence because that's the kind of guy that you're going to want to root for and you want to follow if he's going to be your coach. So that's another thing about him that I like.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the coaches that follow him. I do think Josh McDaniel was at the game last Sunday. A lot of which struck up a lot of rumors that he was in a conversation for head coach, was never going to happen. But I think Josh McDaniel will be the offensive coordinator either for Gerard Mayo or for Bill Belichick, wherever he ends up next year.
I'm going to say that Mayo would probably stay away from him, knowing that that age gap, right? And knowing that, he's going to want to start with a clean slate.
He needs a strong offensive guy, though, in that position. He can't wimp out and go the directions that Bill did.
But I feel like you don't want this to become
Bill O'Brien.
You don't want this to be a Dable situation. You know what I'm saying? This is his first run at it. He's 37. He's 37 years old. The youngest coach in the NFL now is going to be younger than McVay.
Is he actually aging, McVay?
No, I mean as far as being hired as the youngest coach.
No, I know. That was a joke. McVay, he was 32 when he got the job, wasn't he?
McVay was like 15 or something like that.
Yeah, 15 years old.
He just had finished wiping the sweat off of one of those Redskins quarterbacks when he got hired. Anyway, but so it's gonna be. I don't feel like Josh McDaniels will be near Patriots team in the next 5 to 10 years. To be honest.
And again, I don't know what Mayo's relationship was with McDaniel when they were both together there, so I don't.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing too, right? Yeah.
But I do think if that doesn't happen, I think he will be with Bill wherever Bill goes. That's what I think. So
I mean, so the thing with Mayo, the best thing about his situation is like he can pull from former coaches on the Patriots and a couple old coaches from Tennessee if he wanted to, or ex-players.
I think Mike Vrabel will get a job, but if he doesn't, he could do worse than bringing him on his staff. It might be a little weird because Vrabel was also talked about for the job a little bit, but
I literally feel like for the Patriots, they're going with Mayo and they're going new culture, new youth, new face, just to change it up a little bit.
Well, it's not going to change the culture that much because he's been in the Patriots organization for the last.
What I mean as far as culture is like the new, AD after Tom Brady. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So. Let's talk about before we continue with the pro coaches because we do need to talk about Pete Carroll and we can talk about some of the other jobs if we're surprised whether they're gone or not. But let's talk about Nick Saban because again we just talked about the greatest professional coach of all time in my mind. Now we're going to talk about the greatest college football coach in my mind. Nick Saban surprises everybody, and he's tired. And I think. He said, I'm tired. I don't have the same vigor. He's 72 years old. Certainly looks better. If you look at pictures of Bear Bryant when he retired at 70 and Nick Saban at 72, or Bear looks like he's 20 years older than Nick. But I think as what's made him tired is, he doesn't want to deal with this new reality of what college football is today with the NIL and the transfer portal. And, you work your butt off to bring in these 18-year-old kids and they're gone the next year. So I think he's tired of this new reality. I think that's why he's probably walking away now after what I think had a great career, 7 national championships. I think this is his greatest coaching job, even though he lost in the semifinals. I think this is his greatest coaching job that he's done at Alabama since he's been there. So I think that's why he's walking away. And by the way, I think Alabama needs to make a move quickly because they've already got some 5-star recruits that are decommitting. They need to make a move. And so talk this morning, we were talking about whether they might stay in the organization. I think if he'd handpicked a successor, we'd already know it.
Don't say it.
We'd already know it. Because I don't think there's a guy there ready to be a head coach. Tommy Rees isn't ready to be a head coach at Alabama, that's for sure. So Dan Lanning's out. He pulled himself out of the running last week. Dabo is going to come up, but if Dabo doesn't change his approach, he's dead set against NIL and the portal, and he will not get this job if he doesn't embrace it. What are your thoughts? An interesting name came up last night, and Mike Norvell being a candidate here as well from Florida State.
Your boy from Mississippi, Ole Miss, is on the.
Lane Kiffin's not getting that job.
No, but the problem is that, and I say it's a problem, is that his name is on the list. It might be on the short list but it's on the list. Listen,
By the way, it's tough to be that guy. Again, if following Bill Belichick, the same kind of thing. It's tough to be the guy that follows the guy.
right.
Alabama struggled for a long time after Bear Bryant retired. You know, people who think Nick Saban walked into a garden job at Alabama are nuts. That place was a mess. They had a couple of good seasons under Gene Stallings, you know, in between, but mostly Alabama was a mess for 20 years before Nick Saban got there. So it's tough to be that guy.
Yeah, and before we go there, I just want to say, and I feel this way, once the whole alignment thing started changing with adding Texas Tech and Missouri to the SEC, you already saw a little bit of
Texas A&M. Texas A&M. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
You said Texas Tech. You meant Texas A&M.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Texas A&M. You're right. My bad. You saw a little bit of like hesitation from him, a little bit like, you know, just like, okay, now we got to change my scheduling, my plan, like, you know, because he's a man who thinks 2-3 years ahead. He's not a man that, you know, you give him an idea and he's going, okay, yeah, let's do this right now. He's not like that. He's very methodical, right? So when that landscape started changing in SEC, he was already like, oh, you know, here we go, and already had issues with the NCAA, and then the whole transfer portal started, and then the NIL started, and then there's also talk that might be there might be a situation where the alumni was not ready to support NIL and be able to make that major push, except for like former NFL players who were, you know, helping flip that bill. So those little things, you know, that he has to go out of, you know, his thought frame of coaching and recruiting, because he's a big guy. He's big on recruiting. He's big on coach and making sure he's got a good plan for every game. And
process, right? They talked a lot about the process is what made Alabama successwould They were very consistent in how they approached every season, every recruiting class, everything. So
and then he would even though I don't know if he was ready for it, but he's like, just tell me what team I got to play. We'll go play them. Yeah. You know, it was easy for him to say things like that, but it's not easy to do. You know, it was easier said than done. So I think that those are the things that kind of started pulling at him and making him feel like, you know, like tired and very, you know, because it's not easy. And then he had a turnstile at coaching, which is not easy either. Even though he had guys come in and recuperated their careers, they didn't stay long. You know, they weren't there 6, 7, 8 years. They were there 2-3 years, and then he had to find a new coach, and then he had to find a new coordinator.
Yeah, for a while, he was a recycling guru there. Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Butch Jones to a lesser extent because he hasn't been successful where he went. But
so those things are not easy. And being the head coach is not easy on any level, whether you're a professional NFL coach or a college coach. And the one thing about the college coach is you have to always deal with the athletic director and hear about from the NCAA on the background, and these are the new rules, these are compliances you have to do, this is what the students have to take care of. And like, you don't, when you coach in football or a sport, you don't want to hear about the other stuff, but you're the head coach, you're the one in charge. So those are the things that you also have to kind of, you know, take care of. So on the back end. So, but kudos to him, great career. Again, I don't hate the guy. I was, you know, I like football. I like SEC football. I'm a Tennessee fan, and I didn't hate him. I didn't like the fact that he won a lot against us, but against Tennessee. But you know,
but he's been very good for the SEC. So when he got there, the SEC, listen, it was a great conference then, but he's raised the profile of the SEC even twice as big as it was before he got there. And again, because of that polarizing figure, people love or hate him.
And let's not forget, LSU, you better thank your lucky stars. If Saban never arrived there, LSU would be in a whole heap of trouble. He rejuvenated that alumni base. He rejuvenated that university. And
you're talking about him being at LSU, right? Yeah,
him being at LSU. And then when he went to Alabama, he did the same thing in Alabama. But Alabama was more enriched with tradition, and so it wasn't more rejuvenation. It was more like getting a foundation going and making sure that they got some wins. So, but every team he's touched, he's won at, right? Michigan State.
Except for the Dolphins.
I'm talking
in college. In college, yes. He went 9-2 at Toledo to start. Yeah.
Yeah. So, everywhere he's had a winning mentality. He's been a winner, and he's created winning culture and has helped his coaches and his coordinators become to give him something to go off of. Not all of them have been successful. Not all of them have gone to do big things, but they can accredit to him that he's helped them somehow.
I can think of one who's done a pretty good job in Georgia, so it's not a barren tree.
That's funny you say that, because the last game they played, I was like, what this guy's going to do, and he's still that team was deeper than Alabama. Georgia was deeper than Alabama as far as.
By the way, a guy we did mention as a candidate will get a phone call. He's not leaving Georgia for Alabama. Kirby Smart, but Alabama's got to make the phone call and say, "Hey, Kirby, any interest at all?" Because he's got ties there. So
right. So
stranger things have happened. I know Rick Sherlock. If you're listening, you don't want to hear that, but he's going to take the phone call. If it's just no.
Everybody's going to take the phone call, but only one person is going to be right for the job. Yeah, and it might not. Maybe it won't be the right person for the job for another. I'm gonna say 3 or 4 seasons. I'm just going out on a limb.
Maybe. Listen, I remember the first couple of guys that replaced Bear Bryant. One was Ray Perkins, came from the Giants. He was an Alabama alum, struggled big time. After 3 years, he couldn't wait to get out of there. He wanted to get out so bad, he went to the Buccaneers, who were terrible at the time. And right after him, I think who was right after him? I want to say might have been Gene Stall. No, Bill Curry right after him. And Bill Curry struggled there. Yeah. Gene Stallings had some success, but the rest of the guys all struggled. Mike DuBois, Dennis Francione, one of the Shula kids, Mike Shula, I think. He was terrible. Mike Price from Washington State, who was a hot commodity at the time, got the job and got fired after going to a strip club right after signing. So he didn't even coach a game. What's Rick got here? Georgia's the odds-on favorite again this year, bringing back many of the key pieces. Agreed.
It's going to be a whole different landscape, so I don't know who's going to be a favorite this year.
We'll see. Listen, this much I will say, and I get into it on my college football show a lot, that there's good football being played elsewhere in the country, but the SEC is by far the best conference in the country. I've never disputed that, but there is good football being played elsewhere. This conference is going to be a monster next year. Texas is on the rise. Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin is on the rise. They're going to have 4 or 5 teams in the playoff next year, the 12-team playoff for sure.
Yeah, and I mean,
they would have had 5 teams this year.
We'll see when spring begins. We'll see who's on the roster and who's not, because a lot of these teams are changing players. Like,
the early betting line, yeah. So, moving on from and again, by the way, I'll say this again: Alabama's got to move quickly here to name a new head coach, probably by this weekend, because recruits are already starting to decommit. You can't have that. So, I think he'll be in place by the weekend.
Every time Saban's left a football program, there hasn't been much success. So that's one of the reasons I'm saying.
Les Miles did okay at LSU, I think, when he got in there.
That was maybe one of the only places that he's left where they were okay. But
Michigan State, I mean, didn't oh crap, I can't remember the guy's name now. Retired D'Antonio, didn't he replace Saban there? I mean, he did pretty well over 15 or 20 years. So,
I mean, to be a championship team and then go leave.
Even Miami was better after he left. Remember the guy, Tony, the guy who wore the sunglasses all the time, even at night? What was his name?
Tony, the old Cowboys coach, Tony Serrano.
Yeah. I always say Soprano, but it's like Soprano or something like that. Guys just say the Sopranos were big at the time. I always call him Tony Soprano. So, anyway, we'll move on to one other big surprise, and we'll talk about some of the other coaches quickly, or coaching moves. Pete Carroll, to me, came out of left field. Pete Carroll, again, 72 years old, the oldest coach in the NFL, but certainly a lot of life left in him. He said after the game, they won and they lost a tiebreaker to get in the playoffs, but he said he was ready for next year. He's excited about the future. He's ready to go. And, this isn't, again, an amicable decision to kick himself upstairs. He got fired. You guys got to read between the lines. I don't think he'll be an advisor for Seattle at all. I think he'll coach somewhere else next year. I think he's ready to coach.
And
Seattle's getting ready to sell the team, and you can bet it's going to be a big slice in that payroll next year.
That's what it is. It's that they've already talked about selling the team for years.
Yeah. I believe it's in Paul Allen's will that the team was going to be sold by 2025.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening here. And,
or if it wasn't in his will, his family members said that it was going to be sold before 2025. One of the something like that. But there's another thing with him being the coach is that he didn't have a quarterback to support the defense that he was balancing off at the back end. So I mean, kudos to Geno. He did what he did. Comeback player of the year. He's been okay as a quarterback, but he's not the kind of quarterback that's going to help the team get to a Super Bowl, right? He's just serviceable.
Yeah.
So,
Pete Carroll was never, ever in serious trouble in Seattle. Pete Carroll's been an institution up there. He brought a woebegone franchise to more than respectability. He won a Super Bowl, went to another Super Bowl, had him in the playoffs, probably 3/4 of his career there. This is a surprise, and Pete Carroll was definitely fired. And Pete Carroll, I think, will be coaching next year. And if you're a Seattle fan, I'm sorry, you're probably going to have a dismal season next year because they're going to cut this payroll so they can sell the team. That's what happens when you get ready.
They should just sell the team right away, though. If they're going to do all this, they should just. They already got rid of Russell Wilson's contract. They're getting rid of.
No, I'm going to say this summer, this winter, they're going to gut this team. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, they're going to. Yeah, because they want to make sure that it's viable for them to make some money back. But
so Geno Smith will be playing quarterback somewhere else. For instance, DK Metcalf could be playing somewhere else next year. So a lot of stuff going on. I'm very surprised there. What are some of the other situations though that surprised you? I was surprised at Vrabel. You follow the Tennessee situation closer than I do. What I read. He did I know the trend the last couple of years hasn't been great, but he took, again, a franchise that was going nowhere and had him in an AFC championship game in a couple of years. Quarterback play probably held him back from doing better. But what I read was that the owner, what's her name? She's just Bud Adams' daughter. I know that. What's her name?
Shrunk.
Her last name, something Adams, something, whatever. Anyway, held it against him because some of the things he said when he went to New England this year to enter the Ring of Honor on their bye week, and he talked about what a great organization the Patriots were, and every franchise should espouse to be like they are. And I think what I read was that she held this against him and held a grudge, and that's why one of the big reasons he's out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that she talked about.
Hello, Tanner.
She talked about winning and this, but you have to understand too that he didn't do himself he didn't help himself at all by not being able to keep a coordinator in house to help that huge contract that they gave Tannehill. So they had a top 5 running back. They had they suffered a little bit with the wide receiver situation. And offense was one of the biggest mishaps. And this is a high scoring, type of league now. So you got to score 27 plus points, and they weren't doing it in the last 3 seasons average wise. So,
well, they were trying to transition the quarterback, to Will Levis, which again, it was derailed a few times by injuries. And quite frankly, they don't have the skill position players other than Derrick Henry, who, by the way, is going to start to go backwards here pretty quickly just because of the way he plays the game, in my mind. So I think this is a desirable job, as we talked about before, for potential head coaches. And I do think if Mike Vrabel wants to coach this year, he'll coach somewhere in this league, I think.
I don't have anything against Vrabel, except for the fact that he couldn't move forward on offensive coordinator. He couldn't grab and keep a guy there. All these guys left to be head coaches, and they weren't even decent head coaches or great head coaches anyways. So But it was good. It was a good thing because some of them actually held back the Titans offensively. But
and going backwards a little bit to Tanner's comment about, and I'm not sure the context. Sometimes people will write things and I think they think it's good with this type of comment. To me, I'm reading it as he thinks the Pats are signing him as nuts. Gerard Mayo is very respected around the league. Gerard Mayo's was going to interview for head coaching positions last year around the league, and the Patriots asked him not to, made it worse as while in his contract, and made it clear to him that he was going to be the heir apparent, and they stayed true to that word. So Gerard Mayo is very respected, not just in the Patriot organization, but around the league, and I think he's going to be a really good head coach, and I think he's a great guy to keep kind of the culture and also adapt it, as you talked about before.
Plus, he's been on winning teams. He knows how to win. Like even like people like Raheem Morris and the coach down in Texas,
DeMarco Ryan,
DeMarco Ryans. These guys, they not only were their players, but they came out of good colleges. But Mayo has been a winner everywhere he's been. Like so that makes a huge difference too. So not to take away from what Raheem Morris does, because he's very. If it wasn't for him, the Los Angeles Rams would have never won a Super Bowl. And Raheem Morris, and if DeMarco Ryans was in Texas, they wouldn't be in the playoffs right now. But this Gerard Mayo is maybe one notch above them, and he didn't go out to get a job because, as Keith said, they held him in Patriot land and kept him there and made sure that he was ready for the billing when the time came. And now
he might have got that job in Houston instead of Ryans if he'd actually got to an interview for it. So
there was talks that he might have got the job as a Dolphins coach.
He might have a couple of years ago. Yes. So, and again, Tanner, welcome this morning. And I could be reading your comment wrong because I know sometimes people will talk in that kind of context and mean it's a good thing. But sometimes my 64 almost year old brain doesn't process it that way. To Ralph Williams, who, as I talked about earlier, is got RW Media, and I'll give you another plug while you're here, Ralph. I did at the top of the show as I always do, but Ralph at RW Media doing a lot of great stuff, including the Sports Corner with Smoke and Jim Frazier every Tuesday at 5 p.m. on WBVP, 1230 a.m. and 99.3 FM. Check him out. A lot of good stuff they're doing down there. So welcome again this morning, Ralph. Been here the last couple of weeks. Nobody's called me a giant penis yet this morning, fortunately, but it's early yet. It's early yet.
But aside from those unnecessary comments, Seattle, I think they're just going to – I don't think any coach that Seattle picks is going to be a bridge coach because of the fact that they're going to be sold.
Oh, agreed.
Right?
Yeah,
so
the top guys are not going to want that job. They're probably going to – I was thinking Dan Quinn, but then I'm thinking – because Dan Quinn's a perfect fit. He was there, was on those Super Bowl teams that won and lost. But if they're going to have new ownership, do you put yourself in that position? I don't know if you do.
It's going to be a terrible situation for the first few years in Seattle for the Seahawks. But
I don't know what they
figure that out. If they can, I don't understand why the NFL doesn't push for them to just go ahead and sell the team right away and not hurt, because the Seahawks have a great young team.
We don't know that they're not going to sell this team before the next season. We don't know that. I mean, by 2025 was what was stipulated, right? But it could happen before that.
I mean, as much as the NFL went to push on the sell for the Broncos, they should go ahead and do the same thing for the Seattle Seahawks, because you're going to be putting your business and you're a team from the NFL, and you don't want to put you have a great fan base there, man. You're going to lose a lot of money because you don't know what you're going to do. That makes no sense.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do up there when they have a couple of really, bad years, which is quite possible. Welcome to Dave Pollock, another Amsterdamite. Not sure what link you got up there, Dave, but hopefully that's a real one. But welcome to you. Let's look at some of the other guys again. Nothing really surprising to me. Vrabel surprise. We talked about Carroll, a big surprise. But you look at Ron Rivera, in Washington. No surprise. And look, I have a lot of respect for Ron Rivera. I've talked about it a lot. He's overcome a lot personally with health, fighting cancer, beating cancer, basically. But Ron Rivera is not getting another job, guys. Ron Rivera's had 3 winning seasons in like 13 or 14 seasons in the NFL. Went to quite frankly, that's not going to really turn a lot of people on.
No, the only thing about Ron Rivera, though, he would be a great consultant. I would definitely put him on a team to manage scouting, to manage new players coming up in the upper management. He's a terrible talent to waste away because of the situations he's been in. Mind you, even though he had 3 winning seasons, that ownership there didn't help him at all.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I agree. So in Atlanta, Smith, I can't see how if there's any argument you shouldn't have fired him. Again, no quarterback. I get, but there's talent on that team, and you got it, especially in that division.
Yeah.
It's probably best for the Atlanta fans that they didn't find a way to win this division, because they might have kept him around where he really shouldn't have been kept around at all.
Former coordinator of the Titans.
Yeah. And a good coordinator. Again, these guys are good coordinators, and sometimes they just don't make it. Staley, we've talked about a lot. Certainly no surprise. Should have been gone. McDaniels. Reich maybe got fired too soon in Carolina. They didn't give much of a chance or much of a roster to actually win with. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
He got the bad end of that deal for sure. And I'm surprised that he went there knowing the landscape of the NFL, knowing most of the owners in the NFL. I'm surprised that he went out of his way and accepted that position, to be honest with you. But, I feel like the NFL should start making some moves to move in some of these owners, have them stand up to a higher, standard, and they need to do something, because there's a couple teams out there that just keep, putting out bad juju, man, and it's not good for the league.
Guys that didn't get fired, I'm a little surprised about Eberflus in Chicago. I thought he might go, because I thought thered be 10 openings, but now I've already got 1, actually 2 with Vrabel and Carroll that I didn't think would be open. I'm surprised about Eberflus not getting fired.
He's been doing a better job than what's his name did.
Well, they did a good job down the stretch. They went 7-6 the last 13 after losing their first 4, so he didn't do a bad.
Second year, right?
And it's hard to just start over. So, and Arizona's got a first-year coach. Obviously, you're not going to fire him. The Giants situation, you're not firing your second-year coach after he made the playoffs with the first year when his quarterback missed the whole season. You're not going to do that. 2 places to watch, though. I still think the Dallas situation is tenuous, even though they made the playoffs. If they flame out in the first round, McCarthy's going to better watch his back.
I know, which is sad, because he's actually, comparably speaking, he's actually not a bad coach record-wise. It's just the image that has had coming from Green Bay, right? I mean, but you're talking about a guy who's been able to handle himself.
It's every coach in Dallas for 30 years, though, because they don't ever do anything in the playoffs when they do make the playoffs. So it's not just Mike McCarthy. The problems there are higher up. Yeah. They need a real football guy running that operation. So he could be in trouble. And another guy I'd still watch, even though it seems his job was safe at the end of the season, Dennis Allen in New Orleans, to me, is going to should get fired. He didn't. Dennis, after that end of you followed the end of that last game, right? Where he told them to go into victory formation, and the entire team, led by Jameis Winston, said, nope, we're going to get our buddy here a touchdown. And it caused a big fracas at the end of the game between Allen and Smith from Atlanta, because he thought Allen was, rub it in his nose, and he didn't. And, I don't care that much about the touchdown, because I don't care about running up scores in the NFL. The fact that he said, don't do this, and they did it, tells me he has no control over the players there. And I think he may still end up on the outs here before this game's over.
It's funny you said that, because we've talked about him for the last 2 years on how he should move on because of what was left there, and people might not follow him like they followed Peyton. But I thought you were going to mention Sirianni with the Eagles.
You know what? I meant to. I'm glad you brought that up. I think, and Tanner, I'll get to your comment here in a second. I do think, and I went we on the Northeast Professional Sports Show on Wednesday night. Pags was on saying, they don't care about losing the game to the Giants. They don't care about this. They don't care about it. You've got to care about going into the playoffs, losing 5 of your last 6, and at least 5 of those games to teams you had no business losing to. And there's something wrong there. There's something seriously wrong there. And Sirianni, if they don't make a deep run in the playoffs here, he may very well get fired as well, because the problem goes pretty deep as far as I can see. They're too good to start 10-1 and finish 5-6.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust. I never trusted McCarthy, and I don't trust Sirianni, and those are the 2 guys you mentioned. If they do lose their jobs, I feel like the candidacy is less, has less people that the teams will be that the openings, especially like you have the older coaches, Belichick, Harbaugh, Carroll, and then you have the new regime coaches. But I feel like there isn't that many younger guys that you can move around in the NFL to have that much experience and not have issues like Dable has here in New York, being a coach because of experience wise. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for sure. And you are in the driver's seat because you guys set yourself up for achievement and success, and you got a young coach who has experience in winning, and a young coach who knows the system, who the newer regime can benefit from, and it's you Patriots are right now. They're in the up. All they need to do is draft well and get better trades. The only thing right now that we don't have is a team.
Yeah, let's just judge the next 20 years by the last 20 years, because it's not going to happen.
No. And remember, I mentioned that to you too. Remember, I was like, you guys will have a tough time because you were moving on from one of the best quarterbacks that have ever played, and you expected the next guy to be the guy, and it's tough.
The problem is younger fans, right, who've known nothing except success. I lived 30 years before that success started as a Patriot fan, so because I'm old, and I recognize this doesn't happen, right? They had a handful of good teams in those 30 years, and the rest was miserable.
Right. So, hey, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Go ahead and follow through. I got a doorbell roll.
That's okay. And Tanner brought up, I read his message right. Excited to see Mayo after I said that. Hopefully you are. I love the guy. And your question about Bieniemy getting announced, I'm not sure. Listen, Eric Bieniemy should have had a head coaching job a while ago. I know that he felt he was held back by Andy Reid because Andy Reid got all the credit for that Kansas City offense, and Bieniemy did not. This is one of the reasons he moved on to Washington. I think they did a pretty good job with what they had to work with in Washington, a rookie, second-year quarterback and middle of the road, I think, skill players. So I think he did a good job there. So I don't know where he's getting announced. If he will get announced, Tanner, maybe you know something I don't, and I'm assuming you're talking about Washington. I'm not really sure.
No,
Washington
Mayo's going to be announced next week already. They already mentioned that.
No, Mayo's getting announced today. He's asking about Bieniemy getting announced, and I haven't. He's going to interview, I'm sure, but I don't know where he's going to necessarily land. I think he should have been a head coach, as I said before this. I think the NFL fraternity, owners fraternity, has held some things in his past, going back to Colorado, in college against him. We're talking 30 years ago now, and people change, and people learn from their mistakes, and I think Eric Bieniemy has done that and deserves a chance.
Do you think did Washington say they're going to keep him?
I don't know. I don't know where Tanner's going here. Maybe he'll comment back. I have not read that Bieniemy was on the verge of being signed by anybody. Maybe it's somebody other than Washington. I don't know. If I'm Washington, I think Mike Vrabel will be a good fit in Washington, to be honest with you.
Something
Something to think about. So we get a couple of these other comments, and we may stay a couple minutes late just to do
I'm-
those rankings. I'll have to sign off.
I heard and saw that Atlanta might give him an interview, but then also they turned around and said they were going to interview Belichick and this and that. So
Listen, and I think Tanner's talking about McCarthy here. I agree they won the division, but they're in the playoffs every year with these guys, Tanner, and they don't win games. I mean, they've won. Mac Jones only got one less playoff victory than Dak Prescott.
Tanner and Keith, I do want to say one thing about McCarthy. Is that they got rid of the offensive coordinator. He went to the Chargers. The Chargers did horribly scoring wise this year with the top 10 quarterback. Maybe.
Well, McCarthy took over the play calling, which I think was a smart play, and they changed their approach. I agree. He's done a good. I don't say he's done a bad job. I'm just talking about the culture there. I'm not saying he's done a bad job or should be fired. I'm talking simply about Jerry Jones and the way he's going to approach this position if they don't win a playoff game, or maybe even if they don't get to the NFC Championship game.
And another thing that we don't give a take on is that he's rejuvenated Dak Prescott to play almost as good as he's played the first 2 seasons that he's been in a Cowboy uniform. And he's actually, I think he's an MVP candidate this year, but some people are already giving that away.
I would think he would be. I mean, it's a quarterback award, so he should be in the conversation for sure.
Yeah.
Rick kind of backing up what I said is Fred Flintstone is his nickname for Mr. McCarthy. Dennis Allen should have been let go in the end zone that game. I don't disagree. I mean, he's lost that team. If that team just goes rogue and scores a touchdown with no time on the clock, basically, when he told him to kneel, he needs to be gone. And so do those players, by the way. But
is that a team that is that will interest some of these coaches, the Saints, because they got contracts that are hamstringing this team.
I'm not really excited about that job. I wasn't excited when Dennis Allen took it because Derek Carr as my quarterback. I'm not a big fan, as you know.
Yeah.
I'm just looking up Eric Bieniemy right now because Tanner's got another comment coming up that he thought he was going to be announced.
Oh, I thought they were called the Eagles.
I don't see anything. In fact, the one article I do see from the Washington Times says Eric Bieniemy bet on himself this year in Washington and he lost. So I don't see any articles. I don't see any articles pointing to him getting ready to sign. Here's Tanner's comment about that. He thought he was.
If we go to the first 4 weeks of the NFL football start, the Washington Commanders were scoring an average of like 20, 25, 24 points a game. Then the defense just kept getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And then they traded the young two defensive players, and they got worse. And they went from 24, but it stayed above 20 points, which in that division, they were competitive, and they had a few games, and they played better than the Giants. They played better than some of the other teams that were, ranked lower than them. So
let me just interrupt you real quick because I want to sign off to the and we're going to stay here, guys, for a few minutes longer because I do want to get into quarterback rankings for the playoffs. We'll stay a little bit longer today, but I do have to sign off with the Northeast Streaming Sports people on Roku because there'll be another show coming up following us. So just a quick program reminder for you guys. Sunday Stream of Consciousness this week, going to be play it by ear because I'm traveling back from Rhode Island from a wedding, so we may do something later in the afternoon impromptu. Next week, you'll still see the Roku people will still see the college football huddle on Saturday as it normally is, and Are You Serious will not air live next week because I will be in Vegas or traveling back from Vegas. So we'll see when we see you over there. And let me I'll sign off to you guys, and then we'll continue with our conversation here because we got some comments yet to get to. All right. So anyway, where were we? Go ahead. I was getting ready to do that. So go ahead.
I don't feel like that article is fair at all. I don't think Bieniemy did a bad job. In fact, if anything goes for sure, Bieniemy should stay being a coordinator or even a head coach because the situation in Kansas City shows you how much he's being missed right now as an offensive coordinator. So
well, again, look, the weapons are not what they were either. And everybody's writing off the Chiefs. Don't write off the Chiefs.
don't write them off. No, not at all.
They're still the defending champions until they lose, and they got the best quarterback in football still. So,
and the situation is this: as a fan, as somebody who follows football in New York, I would much rather have Bieniemy as any type of coach on any of the two teams, the Jets and the Giants, than the people we have now. And that to me, and he played for the Jets, so that's
that would have been 100 years ago. That was probably under Lou Holtz or somebody. So, Tanner does comment about the Eagles having too many egos. Don't disagree, but guys, good coaches manage those egos. And part of the problem is the head coach has got the biggest ego in the freaking room, in my mind. He thinks he invented football.
Let's not forget a former great coach left the Eagles because of too many egos with McNabb and the whole thing that happened with what's his name, the wide receiver Terrell Owens. So and that got
he made out pretty well after he left, didn't he?
All of them, except the only player that didn't make well after he left was McNabb. Owens went.
No, I was talking about the coach.
Yeah. He did.
We know Andy Reid did pretty well, probably better than he did with the Eagles, and he did pretty well with the Eagles.
He did do pretty good with the Eagles.
Great show with Sonia the other night. I had fun with Sonia Wednesday night. What's the name of her show again? From All Things Football from a Lady's Perspective. I'm probably butchering the name, but I had fun with Sonia guesting on her show the other night. It was a lot of fun.
I like her opinions. She's got a great perspective. So,
yeah, she does. She does. I had a lot of fun. And thanks for tuning in to that, Rick. Let's see. So let's move. What I want to do before we sign off here, because I don't want to just let this one slide. That's why we'll go a little bit long. Playoffs are starting.
Playoffs.
We've got 14 teams in playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Too many, but whatever.
All playing this week. 49ers and Ravens will not play this week. But I want to rank the starting quarterbacks on these teams. But again, who you trust most to win through these playoffs. Forget about their stats necessarily through the year, whatever. Well, I guess you got to look at that. But
yeah, look at
just
that.
What your thought process is about all of these guys. And I'm going to start. And what I'm going to do is name the guys, and then you tell me where you rank them. And I'm going to start kind of lower. I'll start with Mason Rudolph because I got Mason Rudolph at 14. Mason Rudolph has done pretty well the last few weeks, but now he's going to play better caliber of football, playing Buffalo in Buffalo. I think the Bills out.
I rank him 13 and Love 14.
Love 14. All right. Well, since we're talking about Love now, I've got Love at number 10.
10?
Number 10.
That's high. That's really high.
Because Love's going to Dallas.
Yeah,
that's going to be a very tough spot for them to come out victorious, which is why I have them as low as I have them. But upset could happen there. It would be a very big surprise.
I don't want to upset people in New York State, but I think I think the quarterback is not going to have a great game, but the Steelers will have a better game, and I think the upset will be the Steelers over the Bills.
All right. Well, since you are saying that, where are you ranking Mr. Allen? Because I have Josh Allen at 30. I think Buffalo's going deep into the playoffs. I think they'll be in the AFC Championship game.
I have him at 5, and not because he's not. I think the fact of the matter is that they don't have a complementary team. It's not balanced well, and they still haven't figured out the running game. Are they going to go with it? They're not going to go with it. What are they going to do? And they're putting it too much on Allen, and I think that's going to come back to bite the Bills in the butt.
All right, and since we've already mentioned Jordan Love, we might as well mention the guy he's playing against. I'll mention Dak, and I've got Dak second in my power rankings of quarterbacks in the playoffs.
I have him at 3.
Okay, that's not bad. I'm going to go back to the bottom of my list, and at number 13, I have Joe Flacco.
Ooh.
I don't care what he's done. got off his couch a month ago. They haven't beat a lot of really good teams in this stretch. If they win, if they somehow find a way to win, who are they playing this weekend? They're playing. Let me get to
the Browns are playing the Texans.
They're playing the Texans. I love the Texans this weekend. I think Joe Flacco and the Browns go home. I got Flacco number 13. Where do you have him?
I have him at 12.
Okay, we're pretty close there. And since we're talking about Flacco, we might as well go to the guy he's playing, and C.J. Stroud, and I've got him number 7 on my list.
Very good. I got him either 6 or 7. It's a toss. But,
yeah. All right. So I'll go back to the bottom of my list. Number 12, I have, this might raise a few eyebrows. I don't know. Another one will. Jared Goff at number 12.
Perfect place for him.
Just not a spot. Jared Goff is not a guy I expect to come up big, and I think they could lose. I think they could lose this week to the Rams because I've got Stafford at 5.
Oh, you got Stafford that high?
I do have Stafford at 5. I just because, again, and this, by the way, it's a complete turnaround for me from before he went to the Rams. I used to rank him at the bottom of my playoff rankings, but now he's got that playoff victory. He knows how to win in the playoffs, and this is a team that's been playing really good football the second half of the season.
No, I got him at I got Stafford in the lows, maybe 12. I would put Baker in front of Stafford.
I will tell you something here about. I'm sorry. Would you have Baker in that ahead of Stafford in 5?
Yeah.
Let me go to Rick's comment real quick about Dak. I knew that those comments would bring up the Dak haters. Dak can't be trusted in the playoffs. Well, he hasn't won. He's won one game. I get it. He made a stupid mistake with not handing the ball to the refs a couple of years ago when they could have potentially tied a playoff game. If you paid any attention to Dak, especially the end of the season, the teams, when they lost to Miami, that wasn't on Dak. He led them down there and put them ahead with a minute left in the game. Miami went down and kicked a field goal, and they lost. Dak has done very, very well this year, and he's done very well with time management. And now how he does, Rick, I think when he gets in that pressure situation, as you talk about, that's the key. And I do think that's going to change because I do think the Cowboys will be in the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. So, and I know you're talking playoffs. So, again, I get it. That's why I added the pressure spot. I do think Dak has, and again, guys sometimes take a while to grow up and win in that situation. It took Brett Favre a long time to be able to win in the playoffs, and he finally did it. So, again, that's my comment there. Who did we mention here? So we just talked about Stafford. You brought up Baker Mayfield, so I'll give you my Baker Mayfield pick. I have Baker Mayfield at number 9. And since we're talking about Baker Mayfield, they're playing the Eagles this week.
Yes.
And by the way, to think the Eagles have no chance to lose this game, as Pags was talking about the other night, is nuts. I know Tampa Bay played in a weak division. This Eagle team is in disarray. I've got Hurts right now at number 9 on my list.
Ooh, wow.
Okay. I just have no confidence in that team or him right now. The body language is bad. Everything's bad. So far, he agrees so far with my list or somebody's list. We're not that far off. That was the one that may throw people off. I've got Hurts way down the list at 9. Where do you have him, by the way?
Hurts, I have him at 4.
4, okay. I'm not surprised. I mean, a lot of people would.
And the only reason is because he's on a team that's returning to the playoffs that has 90% of people returning. He'd be more comfortable, even though how they played in the past to get to the playoffs. This is a new season, right? So I believe the slate's clean for them, and I believe that the way he's maturing, the way he's played in the last season to this season, he wants to make good for himself and the team. So I think he's going to put. Hopefully he doesn't put that much pressure on him, but I feel like he's going to play better than he did in the season, and that he might play even better than last year in the playoffs.
And he does have an injury to worry about. He has a
little finger injury, but everybody's got a little ting here and there,
Of course, I get that, but when you again add the injury to the rest of the stuff, I don't know what's going on in Philadelphia, but it's not good.
Yeah, but okay, we're ranking the quarterbacks. We're not ranking the team, right? So the
quarterback's part of the problem, though. That's my point. There's no way the quarterback's not part of the problem there.
So here's the thing, and this is why I ranked Allen low, because I was ranking Allen and the team. Do you believe that the Eagles are going to do the same thing that Buffalo's doing, and that they're not sure what their scheme, how they're going to play this playoff? That
I think Buffalo knows exactly how they're going to play it. By the way, just to start there, I think Buffalo's playing as well as anybody in the NFL right now. I think they've got, but again, they've got to finish the job here. They haven't been able to do it. One thing they'll get is if they get Kansas City, they're going to get Kansas City and Buffalo this time, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
All right. Also,
Kansas City wins this week. By the way,
I still feel like if the Eagles win, it'll be because Hurts did his job. How about that?
Well, yeah, I would definitely say that. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The defense needs to step up, and Hurts needs to step up. And,
Yeah, but I feel like Hurts is going to have the better stats in the defense.
They need him to have a good game to win this. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion they're going to lose this. They could very well win it, and they could very well get hot. But, again, there's no reason to believe that. There's no evidence to the fact that this team is ready to turn the corner. Right. You talked about your 4th spot. You had Hurts. In my 4th spot, I'll talk there. I've got Purdy in the 4th spot.
Ooh, okay.
Because he's the only playoff game he's lost. He was out in the 3rd play.
That's the reason I have him at 5.
With a totally destroyed arm. So I like his chances here. And when you factor in, the team and the weapons around him, if they're healthy, he's going to be I trust him more than I trust, obviously, Hurts and some of these other bigger names. And we don't know who they'll play yet, so we won't match them up. I'll go back to near the bottom of my list. I have Tua all the way down at number 11.
Wow.
Just because, again, lack of experience. He has been very inconsistent this year. He's been very good or very bad. Too many turnovers. He hasn't gotten hurt. He stayed healthy. I'll give him that for the most part. He is banged up now, but not concussion-wise or anything he's had in the past. And this team is, when you factor in the quarterback and the team's ability to win, their defense is banged up so bad. I don't think they have any chance to beat Kansas City in Kansas City this week.
I tell you what, if Tua just protects the ball, throws the ball away, doesn't try to force things, he's going to win this game.
They could. They could. The offense is going to have to go out and score a bunch of points because Kansas City will score some points. As much as they've been down on offense this week, that Miami defense is banged up badly. They're missing their 2 best players, 3 best players, I think, on that defense. With Chubb out and Taylor went out a few weeks before that, and this is not a good situation.
No, I just don't. I don't feel like this is going to be a high-scoring game. Anyway, it's going to be way too cold. The wind's going to be a factor. No matter what these guys want to do, whatever the weather and whatever the environment allows you to do is what they're going to do. And I think they're both going to be forced to run the ball, actually.
I am ranking, and to Rick's comment, I am ranking on trust in these playoffs, right? And trust has got to have something to do with the team a little bit. I agree. Again, quarterback can't win all by himself.
Right.
So
no.
These playoffs, I don't trust Tua because of a lot of situations.
No, I have him at 6.
You have him 6? Okay. My 6, that's interesting you do that because that brings me to my 6th slot, and I have Lamar Jackson 6. Even though his team is ranked number 1, I have Lamar Jackson 6. Again, similar to the reasons Rick doesn't have confidence in Dak. I don't have confidence in Lamar Jackson. They have yet to really make a playoff run, a real playoff run with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. I do think that they'll probably play better than they have in the past, and they've got a very good chance, especially with the bye week and get healthy. It's going to be interesting to see who they match up with. Based on my picks, I guess they would get Houston, I guess, right? They'd be the lowest ranked team left, I think, based on what I just called for wins. I guess it could be I don't have the ranking, or I don't have the seeds in front of me, but I think it's Houston. Might be Kansas City. But again, I've got Lamar there until he proves to me, similar to Dak, and maybe I've got too much confidence in Dak here, but this is a different team, and I think it's a different Dak, and I like him. Which brings me to my number one selection, which I do not think you've had your number one selection revealed. I have Patrick Mahomes still. If I got to win one game, I don't care if all my wide receivers are hurt or less than league average. I love Patrick Mahomes. All he's ever done in the playoffs is find a way to win games. Games he had no business winning. Remember Buffalo a couple of years ago, right? That game was over. And he somehow gets them down the field in 30 seconds. So
that was more of a Buffalo snap.
I don't know what it was. Only 30 seconds left on the clock. So Patrick Mahomes will stay at that number one slot until somebody knocks him out.
All right. Well, I have Lamar. I have Lamar at number one and Mahomes at number two, and I have Dak at number three.
Kenny knows I back up. Listen, I back the Cowboys up. I don't back the team as much as I back Dak. That's hard to say. Back Dak, because anytime guys want to get on Dak and the Cowboys for not beating better teams. Well, first of all, you look at all the teams' records against better teams are not as good as they are against losing teams. And Dak against some of these teams has put them in a position to win, and they've lost. So you can knock the Cowboys this year. You can't knock Dak this year. As you said, he's had an MVP caliber year.
Yeah, he has. And it's hard for me to say that.
I know we're ranking it based on playoff confidence, which past history says I shouldn't have any. But I feel there's something different about this team this year. I have for a while. Kenny says, so in my opinion, Mahomes is quite different than Dak. Well, yeah, I see what you're saying. He just loses. He has won once. And it's not all on him. It's not all on him.
The thing is that if they have to win the game, you put it all on him, right? So that's the reason I have Lamar as number one this year, because he's being consistent every game as far as trying to do the small things correctly, right? Throwing away the ball, running the ball, making the big throw if he needs to. And
they're really good at the ball down the field too, and taking them on a couple big drives will put them in position to win. You look at the Miami game. I keep pointing to the Miami game. That's at the time Miami was at full strength, and Miami had that they won the game. Dak didn't lose it. Dak put them in a position to win, and the defense didn't stop them. So, and Rick's comment here about the Bills defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier is home watching with us because of that 13-second drive or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, I mean, I like what Lamar is doing this year, which is why I put him over Mahomes. Mahomes is taking himself out of the game by being upset, by being frustrated, by not being Mahomes-like. He's running sideways instead of running forward. He's throwing short instead of throwing, having zip on the ball. He's just not playing with confidence. As much as he's a confident player, he's not playing with confidence.
Well, I agree. He's not the same confidence we've seen in the past, for sure. But
yeah, and I believe that the fact that his defense isn't holding up also is in the back of his mind. Like, now I got to play. Now I got to come back from this, And where Lamar is like, well, my defense will put me in a good situation, and I don't have to come back on my own. So there's a more confidence balance on the teams. They're different this year. The Ravens are different this year than the Chiefs were in years prior. So that's why I have Lamar 1 and Mahomes 2. Dak been consistent. Only the reason I have him at 3, even though I have him as an MVP candidate, is that this is the first year he's doing this with McCarthy's offense, and so I can't put him higher because I my expectations aren't as high either. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
If he does win, good for him. But I can't expect a lot from him from a new offense that he's running with McCarthy. So
yeah, and to Kenny's comments, still knocking Dak. Look, again, Dak deserves getting knocked. I'm not saying he doesn't because he hasn't had playoff success, but it's not always on the quarterback. If the quarterback puts you ahead in a game with a minute left he's done his job. He's not playing defense, so he did not have anything to do with them losing to Miami when he got him in position to win. Sometimes
the only person I missed was Stroud. Right now, having 7. What did we talk about Stroud?
No, I'm sorry. We did talk about Stroud.
Yeah.
I had him at. I got him at 7.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, you know what? He's had a great rookie season. We don't know how he's going to react in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think it's a good matchup. It's a tough matchup because Cleveland's got a great defense.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think that Cleveland offense is going to be able to do anything. This will be a low-scoring game, I think, in Houston Saturday afternoon. But I think they'll find a way to win, and Stroud he'll be effective. I got him in the middle of the pack just because he hasn't shown me anything yet. So
I told
my
somebody,
emotions are always in check, by the way, Rick.
I told somebody whoever has the ball last in this game is going to win the ball. Is going to win the game in that Cleveland.
Kenny's got a good point. I believe he's talking about Mahomes and a lack of confidence. Yeah, he doesn't have as much confidence as he had because he doesn't have Tyreek Hill. I get it. Kelsey has been not so good this year. This is one of his worst seasons he's had.
I think, and I've been saying this.
Kelsey steps up. This is why I like Kansas City. I like Mahomes. I think Kelsey steps up once we get to these playoffs.
I think the biggest difference is actually the fact that you don't have the enemy there. And like this guy, he's not that much of a good offensive coordinator. What's his name from the Chicago, the ex-Chicago coach? What's his name? Like no matter where he goes, the quarterback
Nagy.
Yeah. Like and I think that's just because his experience in indoor arena football.
Well, in fairness, he coached this. Didn't he coach the quarterbacks in Kansas City before he went to Chicago?
Yeah, so was the Kansas City a great team then? I mean, Kansas City wasn't good until Bieniemy and Reed were running that offense.
Well, they weren't. Well, Reed ran the offense no matter what. We know that. I mean, again.
You want to use Bieniemy as a good example? Fine. I mean,
I think I'm not taking anything away from Bieniemy, but
Well,
and by the way, I'm not talking about numbers. I'm talking about actual game should have been potential game-winning drives that he's led this team on, and then the rest of the team lets him down.
Yeah, no. So and here's another thing about Dak.
Something Kenny and I agree on here.
Here's another thing with Dak also, and he's done. And Lamar's doing the same thing. When he doesn't have an opportunity to throw the ball, he grabs it and he runs forward. And he scored a few touchdowns this year, and so has Lamar.
Yeah.
He's
not the runner. He's not the runner. Lamar is, but he picks his spots. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the kind of confidence I'm talking about. Like if you're Mahomes, you're gonna have a trust issue with your wide receivers. Run forward, get the extra yards. Don't run sideways. That's not gonna help you.
Kenny and I agree here a little bit on the Bills. I think this could be the Bills' breakthrough through a year. They're playing probably better. I would say at this point they're probably playing better than anybody in the AFC outside of the Ravens. So I think they get to the championship game, and maybe they'd be better off if somebody upset the Ravens before then. But
1990 was the Bills' breakout year, and they missed it. So
again, that was a different team. I don't think you'd really rather have Ryan Leaf than Dak. I can say that. Spoken as a true quarterback. What do we got left here? Tanner's got 2021 was a breakout. Well, that was their chance to break through. They didn't do it. So when I say breakthrough, they need to get to the Super Bowl. This team needs to get to the Super Bowl. The window's closing here. The window's getting really close to closing.
For the last 3 years, if Allen has more yards running than any of his running backs, they're not going to win this game.
I don't disagree, but they've run the ball pretty well this year. Just saying.
Not enough. Not good enough.
Cook's one of the leading rushers in the league. What are you talking about?
I don't mean that. But
you say this every time, and
it's not good enough.
I'm telling you argument.
Because he doesn't average 40 yards a game. He barely averages. He's averaging like.
What are you talking about? Now you're making me. Hold on. Cancel that music. We're not hanging out. I'm sticking around for a second. We always have this freaking argument, and you're wrong.
Always a different running back too. Remember that.
It's not a different running back.
How many years has Cook been a running back for the?
I'm talking about this year only. Talk about this year only.
He
Hold
had
on.
1,000 yards barely.
He's run for 1,122 yards this year.
Okay. Yeah, and
what?
Well, how many yards is he
He's
averaging?
second in the league in rushing. He's averaging 66 yards a game. And he only played
one game. He rushed over 100-some yards.
He's averaging 4.7 yards a carry, which is really good in the NFL.
But they don't run him enough, man. How many carries does he have a game?
237.
No, how many does he average a game? How many carries?
I don't have that. I got to do math now. It's 15.
Come on, man. Average like even Derrick Henry's getting like 20 to 25 touches. He's getting 10 more. Saquon's getting 10 more. There's a difference, man. It makes a difference.
Well, those guys don't have Josh Allen as their quarterback either. They don't have a quarterback.
What I'm saying,
you can't compare teams that way.
You have to get the ball to your running back.
You're diminishing James Cook as a running back because he plays with a quarterback who's much more competent in general and also more competent running the football than either of the guys that you talked about.
This is the first time you have a running back that can help you win a game, and you're still a quarterback running the ball. That's not good, man. It wasn't good for Randall Cunningham. It wasn't good for Vic. It wasn't good.
Josh Allen has averaged 30 yards rushing. Josh Allen averaged 30 yards rushing a game. You think that's exorbitant?
Well, it's lower than it's usually, which is good.
It's much lower, and it's let low because he runs a lot around the goal line. He's got 15 touchdowns rushing the football.
But saying,
their problem is not going to be running the football. The problem is going to be defensively and stopping other teams. They need a time of possession, man. That's what they need.
Even
Paula knows Dak will trip on his shoelace. I'm rooting for Dak just so Kenny has got to give him his clothes. I don't know what that is. Maybe the hoodie's too tight. Once again, the silly notion Carlos knows football. Well, you got to get. I guess I stayed on too long. You hadn't got knocked the whole game. You can't run the ball without guys like Rick Sherlock in front of you. Well, Rick's going to be 60, I don't know, years old. I don't know that he'd be that much better right now, but just saying. No knock on you, Rick. I'm just saying. All right, guys, we got to wrap it up because we've gone way long here today. Thank you. What happened? Lost my music. Well, there we go. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Commenting. We went long because we talked a lot about the coaching situation, which had to be done. Just a quick reminder, as I said when I let the Northeast Streaming Sports Roku people go, Sunday Stream of Consciousness, playing it by ear. Maybe if I'm able to, I can do something on an impromptu basis Sunday afternoon when I get back from Rhode Island. Next week I'm in Vegas all week, so Sunday the Sports Huddle will be live on all the outlets on Saturday at 9 a.m. And the Are You Serious, unfortunately, will be postponed next week because I'll be in the air, hopefully, by then. And actually, the more I think about it, no, I can't do it. I'd be in the airport. It'd be too hard. Anyway, we'll take a week off, and if I live through Vegas, I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, win some money, man. Good luck on the card.
Lost my music like Dak loses games. Guys, have a great weekend. Enjoy the playoff football. Second season is here.
Enjoy the